Gaming laptops can be quite the investment. And if you just want a machine to play games on, that much money can be a turnoff. So I walked into my local big chain computer store and I searched for the cheapest gaming laptop they had. And they gave me this, the MSI Thin 15. And while it is the absolute bare minimum of gaming laptops, it did surprise me in a couple of ways. So let's see if spending as little money as possible on a gaming laptop is actually worth it. And please like and subscribe if you like these type of videos. The MSI Thin 15 has a pretty low-key design. While I'm personally not a huge fan of the gray-greenish color, some people actually prefer a more stealthy look. That is, if you ignore the big white dragon on the back and the very obvious vents of a gaming laptop. Although it is on the thinner side of gaming laptops, it's definitely not a thin and light. The Thin 15 also comes in a black and red variant, but it really depends on the region you're buying it from. Now, the first thing manufacturers usually cheap out on is the build quality. The Thin 15 has a full plastic body, and you can feel that in the flexing of the body and the keyboard deck. Normally I would say that this keeps the weight down, but that's not really the case here. It's still pretty heavy. Now, plastic might be fine in some cases, but MSI has a really bad track record in terms of their display hinges. I've seen countless threads and comments about MSI laptops where people's hinges have broken within a year, so keep that in mind. And I had a personal case where this happened to an MSI laptop. I guess you could call that an extra cooling vent or something, but obviously you shouldn't expect exceptional build quality when you're paying this little money for a gaming laptop. You also shouldn't expect super high specifications or anything. But for 600 bucks, an Intel Core i5 and an RTX 3050 is pretty decent. But that RTX 3050 only has 4 GB of VRAM. So in newer games, it might struggle a bit. And a TGP of 45 watts for a GPU isn't very inspiring either. But we'll test some games later to see how it handles them. It does, however, have a great port selection. On the left side, it has a single USB-A port and its charging port. And on the left side, it has 2 USB-A ports, a USB-C port with DisplayPort out, and even an Ethernet jack. It also has this handy HDMI port at the back of the device, so it doesn't get in the way if you're connected to an external screen. So this thing has a better port selection than some laptops triple its price. It charges through a regular old barrel jack, and the charger itself isn't very special. But since the GPU in here doesn't use much power, at least the charging brick is nice and light. Unfortunately, it does not support USB-C charging though, which kinda sucks. The Thin 15's keyboard is not very exceptional. The keys themselves are quite alright and do have some nice tactility to them. And it has a very bright blue-only backlight on it, which looks great with the translucent WASD keys. But within the first 30 seconds of me opening this laptop, one of the keys was already broken. Look, I know cheap devices have cheaper parts, but a broken key out of the box is just unacceptable. So just keep in mind that their quality control might not be very good. Its trackpad isn't very good either. It's a bit on the smaller side, and it's obviously made of plastic, so it feels a bit, well, cheap. And the clicks themselves are very hollow and don't give very much feedback. Now, it is a gaming laptop, so you're probably just gonna use a mouse anyways. So if you have to use the touchpad once in a while, I guess it's fine. The display on here is actually one of its better features. It's got a full HD 144Hz IPS level display, so it's not really an IPS display, but it just looks like one. And the star of this show here really is that 144Hz refresh rate. At this price, it is awesome to see this. Playing games at 144Hz is way smoother than at 60Hz. Now, it isn't the fastest panel by any means, and it does have some ghosting, but it is still way better than 60Hz, and I really can't be complaining. Where I will complain though, is its brightness. At 250 nits peak brightness, you simply cannot use this thing outside. And while the matte coating does help with reflections, it simply doesn't get bright enough. The colors of this display are pretty okay, but nothing exceptional. But like I said before, its display hinge is very scary. It's pretty wobbly, and with MSI's track record, I simply just don't expect it to survive very long. But I was actually quite surprised by this thing's speakers. They do sound a bit muffled, but they're actually decently balanced and get pretty loud. During gaming they sounded good as well, and overall they're just pretty great. The speakers on most gaming laptops sound like you're farting in a tin can, so well done MSI. You're currently listening and looking at the microphone and webcam of the MSI Thin 15. They're both pretty clear and look very nice, but the webcam resolution is only 720p, which might be a bit low. Now let's run some benchmarks on this thing to see how much performance $600 really gives you. In Cinebench R23, the i5 does alright, but it performs a bit like it's 2 generations old. Since, you know, it is. And in 3DMark TimeSpy, it scores pretty low. But that's to be expected from a 45-watt RTX 3050. But let's see some real performance. How does it handle actual games?
You motherfucker, you man. Huh?
Come on, man. Come on, man. Come on, man. Fuerte, cabrón.
Niet als een hond die verdrinkt.
So sure, it doesn't perform amazingly or anything, but you get playable frame rates at 1080p even in the newest games. But more importantly, stable frame rates. It isn't really bottlenecked by its CPU or GPU, so playing games was pretty enjoyable. You'll definitely need to turn down the settings to low or medium in the newest or heaviest games like Cyberpunk, but hey, every game was just playable. But you don't always sit at your desk. So how long does it last on battery? Well, I tested it in 2 scenarios, under light use and during gaming. In the light use scenario, I play a YouTube video on repeat until the battery dies, with the display at full brightness, so 250 nits, and with the laptop in eco or silent mode. But it only lasted 4.5 hours, which is not a whole lot for just simple YouTube video playback. And in the gaming test, I played Battlefield 1 with the laptop on balanced mode until the battery died. And again, it lasted less than the average gaming laptop, dying in under an hour. So I would not really recommend this laptop if you need to use it on the go a lot, or if you use it for school and class on battery. Now in terms of heat and noise, it's pretty okay. The GPU stays very nice and cool under 70 degrees, but that isn't really hard when it can only pull 45 watts max. But the CPU gets pretty hot during gaming, reaching up to 92 degrees maximum. These temperatures are perfectly fine and shouldn't cause any worry, but the keyboard does get pretty hot after a while. So playing games for a prolonged period of time might get a bit warm. The fan noise during gaming or heavy tasks is about on par with other gaming laptops. So it does get a bit loud during gaming, but you can still hear the speakers over it. Now the MSI Thin 15 is pretty damn upgradable. It has 2 DDR4 SODIMM slots, which means you can very cheaply and easily upgrade your RAM. It's got a Wi-Fi card slot, so you could get a lot faster Wi-Fi if you'd want. And while it unfortunately only has 1 M.2 slot, at least the storage isn't soldered to the motherboard. All in all, it's pretty awesome to see that at least cheaper laptops are still upgradable. And now we get to this laptop's strongest point. Its pricing. At around $600, this is pretty much the cheapest gaming laptop you can find in most parts of the world. It also has an RTX 2050 model, which might be even cheaper if you can find it, but the 3050 model is more available. Now keep in mind that these prices obviously vary a lot depending on where you live, but I'll have an Amazon link in the description for if you want to buy it yourself, since Amazon ships globally. So here comes the big question. is the MSI Thin 15 worth it? Well, yes and no. This thing is incredibly cheap for a gaming laptop, and it played every game I tested just at playable frame rates. So it really is a great option for the price in terms of raw performance. And for 600 bucks, you can't even build a gaming PC in most countries outside the West. So for a lot of people, this is actually the cheapest way to get into PC gaming. But the MSI Thin 15 is not a reliable device. The fact that a key broke out of the box and that MSI does not have a great track record in terms of longevity really turns me off from this thing. So do not buy this thing expecting it to last very long. Look, my advice is this. If you can spend a little more money on a more expensive gaming laptop, please do, because they will probably last a lot longer. But if you are on an extremely tight budget and you have basically no other option than this laptop, check beforehand if the place where you're buying it from has a good return policy. Because that way, if you unbox it and it's broken, you can just send it back and get a new one. But how much more value can you get out of your money if you spend triple the amount? Well, stay tuned because I'll be comparing these two in the next video. Now let me give a huge shout out to my YouTube members. Inky, Soundwive, Thomas, Mr. Frosty Dude, Dropzone1, Martijn Snijkers, David Gill, and Felix Nathan. If you become a YouTube member, you get early access to content of mine, a shout out at the end of every video, and you'll support me as a creator to make these videos. And you'll also be part of the Cool Guys Club, so you can use gifts like these in the comment section. So please join the club if you're interested, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.